Hey, Daylights. So, welcome to, I think I'm going to officially call this the Daylight's Den. I think that's going to be it. But before I get started, I want to go ahead and do this listener's discretion advisory. Um, Trigger warning, this episode I am going to be discussing suicide and some of my experiences with that, of contemplating. So, if you are not in a space to be able to listen or face certain things at this time, please stop, pause, or do what you need to do. Maybe revisit at a later time when you're able to. But I wanted to state that first. Now, if you've chosen to continue to listen, thank you for joining and entering into this safe space with me. Again, I think I'm gonna call this Daylight's Den. Everybody knows that if you know me, you know that I call all of my supporters and friends and family and those who support me and those I come in contact with Daylights. For I'm a part of you and you are a part of me, and we all have a light to shine within this world for the world to see. Um, so, with that being said, I do think I want to call this Daylight's Den. And where the den comes from is because growing up, the den was always one of my favorite spaces to be in. Um, Whether it was at my grandmother's house, that's a whole other story for another day, or at my parents', or, just a den area. It's probably a little country or a little um, whatever for many people. Many people probably call it the living room or something like that. But I refer to it from the country, from the South, as the den. So, yes, this is going to be called the Daylight's Den. Another thing I want to start doing before I get started into our talks and sessions and all of that jazz, I want to do the pep talks prayer that I have. And it just simply says, this is not a space to feel judged. This is not a space to feel ashamed. This is not a space to feel alone. But this is a space to feel peace. This is a space to confess. This is a space to let go. And this is a space to receive. Spirit of light, we invite you in to illuminate the darkness. Spirit of peace, we invite you in to settle the chaos within. Spirit of love, we invite you in to comfort. Spirit of joy, we invite you in to make us whole. While our pieces make us feel separated, we understand that it is our cracks that lets the light shine through, and it is our truth and our love that sets us free. And we are the light that shines through the darkness. We are the love that frees ourselves and others, and we are worthy of every goal, every dream, and everything that we aspire to be. And now we breathe in to receive the newness of life and exhale to release the old. So, I was reminded, yes, I'm saying reminded. I was reminded that the month of September is National Suicide Prevention and Suicide Awareness Month. Um, and I say reminded because while on this hiatus, I've made it um, I made it a mission to become or be detached from a lot. And a lot of that is work, a lot of that is just whatever it may be. So, didn't really look at my calendars. Yeah, sure, this is something that should be in my mind, being that I dedicate myself of service to suicide prevention and awareness. Um, but even for me, I needed that time and that break not to overload myself with everything as I normally would. So, although mostly this hiatus is music related, it is also just related in regards to work as a whole. So I just wanted to take a break. With that being said, I was given the reminder today on social media as I was doing a scroll through on Twitter before I came home. And it made me think, and I wanted to rush home and drop everything I was doing to come and do this episode, but I'm also trying to remember that everything doesn't always have to be done like in that moment. I'm a weird person. I think a lot of creatives talk about this. Like if a song comes to you in the shower, like you have to jump out and write it or do that thing before you lose it. I'm the same way as a creative. I like to try to capture it in the moment and capture the emotion and the authenticity that comes with it in that moment as well. But I didn't. I waited a little bit. Of course, I still played around with some things in my mind about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to do this, and but I also just wanted to kind of speak from the heart as well. So I didn't want it too outlined of gotta say this, gotta say that kind of thing. I just wanted to kind of flow. Um, as I stated, this is gonna be discussing suicide. I was looking for a note that I did kind of do on the way home, but can't find it, and I'm not gonna waste too much time trying to look for it. So, I will say this. I haven't really talked about this topic a lot in the recent years because I felt it was too heavy for a lot of people. It was too dark, too emotional, too exhausting for people, especially the people who don't understand it. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a deep thinker. I'm a deep feeler. I feel a lot. So a lot of times sometimes people may feel, and this, this is my own thing that I'm having to work through as well, but sometimes I feel like I can't share certain things with certain people because I don't feel like they can handle it. Especially if I feel like it's too draining or too emotional for them. And, that's due to my own trauma with people who have made me feel, or I allowed them to feel, or I took on feeling like my emotions were too much. My emotions were too heavy. My emotions were just a lot for them to handle. Whether it's, again, my emotions, my thoughts, whatever. Again, I'm a deep filler. I'm a deep thinker, and that's kind of why my best friend is the person that I talk to the most about a lot of different things, because I have that space. As much as I give a safe space, I have that safe space to just talk freely and think freely. As I've said before, we talk about everything and nothing. And that literally captures everything and nothing. But getting into this, I guess, suicide. I have contemplated a few times in my life, um, thinking of this and how I would do it. I don't know if any other people have kind of like planned out how they would do it or whatever, but I had those moments. Um, Probably should have got some water before I started talking, but anyways. Yeah, but I've had those moments. I've kind of planned it out and thought about it and all those different things. I've had 2 attempts, I will say. None that I actually kind of fully went through with, but my first was at 12 and my second was at 18. So I just kind of want to go through that journey and what that looked like and what it felt like. And I don't think I've ever truly sat and talked about this or even spoke it out loud kind of thing. Well, maybe I have. My best friends heard about it, but um, yeah. But at 12, it's hard being young and trying to explain what you feel. And I feel like in this moment, or at that moment of 12, it was kind of the first moment that I remember dealing with like depression, and what I felt was like a nervous or mental breakdown as well. Just being in a space where, again, I was young. I grew up around a lot of my family, specifically my middle brother and a cousin. We were always close, always together. If you saw one, you saw the other two. If you saw two, you saw the one. Oh, probably made no sense, but just saying, like, we were always together. And there was also a lot of pressure for me, feeling like I had to grow up to be in their shoes. Um, I remember in seventh grade, I had the same teachers that my middle brother DJ had in middle school in seventh grade as well. And I remember sometimes we look alike, sometimes we can act alike, but I remember the teachers told me then one day, it was like, "You're nothing like Dwayne." And I'm like, "I'm not him. Why would I be like him? I'm me. I'm different." But again, so some of that pressure, I felt like I had to be someone that I wasn't. Even, going back a little further than that, I remember growing up, even in my family, I always felt like I was blamed for a lot. And I was, looking at it now as an adult, I realized that I just always told the truth. Um, Again, being a deep thinker and a deep feeler, I just always told the truth. And I understand that sometimes that is a lot for a lot of people. Um, Sometimes that truth is heavy and truth can be a lot. Um, I often joke and say that I was the squeaky wheel growing up, and I think that's why me and one of my brothers got into it a lot then, because I just always told the truth. Um, Specifically, I remember one situation where it was between he and a girlfriend that he had at the time, and I think he was kind of like juggling between two. This is probably when I was 14, 15. We fought at my grandma's house because I told the truth. I told one of the girls that he was talking to somebody else. Um, but at 12, it was a lot of pressure. I think one of the things that we don't realize about kids and teenagers at this point in these days, it is pressure of trying to figure out who you are and who you want to be and what you want to do, while also being told who you are and told what to do and told who you need to be. And juggling that is a lot. And I think even with that, I don't really ever say that I struggled with my sexuality. I always felt like I knew. I've literally known since the age of 4. Where I always say, where my cousin and my brothers and them, they talked about girls all the time. I didn't really have any interest. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've always been able to admit if a woman is attractive and things like that. And we've shared kisses and things, but it was never a thing that I knew that I was like fully wanting to be involved with, if that makes sense. But I think this is also a thing of discovery, like in middle school as well, kind of like in the locker rooms, and trying not to be judged for looking at the other boys, because at that point everybody's again figuring themselves out. And while the other guys are talking about girls that they like and things, I'm looking at some of the other boys and not knowing how to put that into words and not knowing how to express that. And don't get me wrong. Well, no, I don't know what I was about to say with that, but thinking about it, it's like, I was gonna say, don't get me wrong. Like, there have been a lot of advancements, and even in the '90s and early 2000s, there was growth in things that had been done, but we were still being gay was still kind of new to me. I felt like new in regards to being public with it and being open about it and things like that. So it was, again, when I talk about this pressure of being 12 and young and going through these discoveries, and I'll even pause and say now, it's like, if you have kids, if you have nephews, if you have nieces, cousins, whoever, talk to them. get in their business, not in the sense of like making it uncomfortable, but sometimes I guess it would be uncomfortable, but just talking to them and asking them like how they feel and giving them that space to just tell the truth. One of the things I love that Iyanla Vanzant says is, no one told you that you can tell the truth and still be loved. So instead of telling the truth, you denied it. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us. And I think a lot of people carry that into adulthood. They were never told that they can tell the truth or be authentic or be who they are in many ways, or just tell the truth about a lot. So instead, they deny the truth. They deny themselves. They deny a bunch of experiences and moments that could free them. But I don't remember the exact time frame back then, but I do remember, again, being 12 and standing in my parents' kitchen, and at that time I had a knife. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to cut my wrist, or I think I held it up to my neck for a little bit, just contemplating like what would it be like if I wasn't here. And I think that's been another part too of just growing and wondering what life would be if you weren't here and if it'll be better. And again, I felt bad as a kid because I always felt like I was in trouble. I felt blamed for a lot, and I'm sure a lot of different people will have different perspectives, but this is my perspective and this is my story, and I'm telling it right now. But I did, like, I felt bad. I felt wrong. I felt a lot of different things. And again, being young, that is a lot of pressure. And when no one gives you that space or asks you how you feel, it's hard. And that was one of the first times I was like, I will take myself out of here. Like, I won't deal with any of this. But I was afraid. At that point, we were taught, committing suicide is one of the most unforgivable things that you can do, and God would not forgive you if you did that. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was scared then. Again, being young and religious and in the church, not sure if I actually did this, what would happen to me. I felt like I would be better because I wouldn't be here, but I did think about like, how would my family feel? But at the same time, I felt like they would be better off without me. And honestly speaking, I don't even think I've been able to have this conversation openly and honestly with my parents about it in this way, because again, I didn't feel like they could handle it. Even in the times when I was older and I began to question them and things, they didn't have the capacity to be able to be open about it because no one told them about it. No one told them that they could be open about it. And that's how I feel about a lot of our older generation in regards to mental health as a whole. It's hard for them to open up sometimes because they weren't given that. And yes, on the flip side of things, my response is, well, you should know how it felt if you weren't given it, and you should want to give it. But I understand that everybody doesn't think the same, and that's okay. But I think around that time, or maybe I was a little younger, was one of the first times that I know I said it would be a little deeper as far as suicide, but I'm just kind of thinking about this mental health journey as a whole. I think I remember one summer, I don't remember exactly how old I was. It was maybe around that same time frame of 12, 13. This might have been the same day now that I'm thinking about it. There was a day that me and my middle brother, got into it, and he was a sneaky little thing. And I think this particular day he did something, and me being loud, and I think I'll slap you or hit you or something, I got in trouble because again, I'm the type, he'll He's not gonna tell you what he's gonna do. He's just gonna do it. I'm gonna tell you, then do it. So I think I got in trouble that day, and my dad, to me, just came down really hard about it that day, and I forget exactly what it was about, but I just remember it was a lot, and I went in my room crying and wrote a letter that I was running away and I was never coming back. And I remember I had this little duffel bag that I threw some stuff in, and honestly, I took it and I slid it under my bed with me, and I sobbed for hours and hours. And I literally remember my dad coming into the room, and he found the note, and they left the house, my mom and my dad, and went out searching for me within the neighborhood. And during this time, one of my cousins came and was knocking on the door, and I was sobbing so long I fell asleep. Y'all know how you get that good cry and you fall asleep. It was one of those moments. I slept after I cried. But my cousins were knocking on the door, her and her husband, and I crawled from under the bed, and I went out and opened the door, and they're like, "Hey, where's your mom and dad?" And I was like, shrugs, I guess they're out looking for me. And she was like, "What do you mean?" And I just handed her the note and I walked off. And since then, a few years later, I was actually told that once my parents got back, because my cousins made me call them and tell them I was home and I was safe, and they came back home. And so my cousin's sister told me years later that she remembered that day, and she talked to my mom that day and asked her what happened and where I was at and what caused it. And she said my mom had looked at her and was just like, "Oh, he was just playing." But although I talked to my cousin and her husband that day, and her husband made me and my brother talk and discuss our feelings and things that day, I never talked to my parents about that day. They never pulled me to the side to ask if I was okay, if I never considered. And I do remember getting older, I did try to bring it up, and I mentioned suicide and things, and again, they just didn't have the capacity to understand. And I've never held this against my parents, but it's still been an emotional thing to carry and deal with. But them just not having the capacity to understand or even try to, I felt so alone growing up. You know, back then we thought that therapy was a white person's thing, and black people don't get therapy. You just pray, you go to church, pray your issues away. It was so hard. I felt so misunderstood and didn't really know how to. Again, you're 12, 13, you don't know how to manage these emotions and what you feel. I remember another time that I did bring it up to try to talk to them about it. My dad was just kind of like, "Well, that's crazy talk. Like, that's you. I've never wanted to take myself out of here or never wanted to harm myself." And Literally, like, I don't know if y'all have seen that meme of Lisa Simpson where she's kind of like holding her hands out and eyes bugging and crying. I'm like, that's you though. I'm me. This is how I feel. And but something that another cousin of mine shared later was that sometimes people can't be there for you because that means they can't be there for themselves. And that made a lot more sense to me in that moment again of just understanding that, on my journey to 30, that they just didn't have the capacity to understand, because I knew as parents, like, that would mean that they would question themselves if they were good enough or if they did things right. And even then, I didn't want them to feel that way. I was just trying to get understanding on what I felt. But I think that's even more of the reason why it's important to talk to your kids and nephews, nieces, and cousins to just see how they feel. None of it ever means that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you failed. But it's worth having that conversation to see what's going on. I'm going to take a quick break. Well, welcome back. A little comedic relief that probably only my best friend will get. Inside joke. I'll explain another time. But so as I was saying, that was a moment of 12, 13, trying to just understand your own emotions and your own feelings and thoughts. And fortunately enough, like, honestly, growing up, my mom did give us a lot of space to talk. She would question us about a lot of different things, and she's the reason why I am the way that I am today, of being a person to talk and be open to talk about my emotions and feelings. But it was something about just in that moment of when it came, and I get it, maybe it was just too hard to face, to think about your child being that unhappy and with themselves or the world or whatever. And just not knowing what to do, I guess. Because I do have to give her props and credit there, that she is truly the reason why I know what a safe space is and what I know what it means to try to get some understanding. Because though she may not have known how to deal or how to manage it as well, she did at least give me that space after time, after I started to bring it up as I got older and continued to get older and bring it up. She began to listen a little more and kind of be a little more in tune. And I do remember some of her responses of just kind of being like, well, I mean, I think even one day she was just kind of like, I'm really sorry you feel that way. And even thinking back on that, I even wonder how helpless she may have felt as a mom of not knowing, or if she knew or whatever. Things we never talked about, and things I would like to talk about even as I'm older now. And I feel like it's I feel like she understands my journey a lot more now. Even if it's something that she didn't. Because here's the thing, I think a lot of times the reason why people don't understand what you feel or things is because they haven't been through it. And I say that as some friends that I had were kind of similar. They didn't understand until they start dealing with it or knew someone close to them that dealt with it. But I've always made it a mission to be very open about my mental health, even before I knew what it meant of, taking care of your mental health. The next episode that I remember having, again, even just dealing with depression through all of this and not understanding that either, and just feeling sad and not feeling myself. And again, but saying not feeling yourself, but not even sure of who you are or knowing what to feel. It's like, how do you juggle all this? But I remember there was a moment getting back onto the topic of like sexuality and things. I remember I had never opened up to my parents before this about like my sexuality and things either. I felt like my mom knew. There are definitely things that, were those clues, and we all know a mom knows. A mother knows their children. But she never brought it up, never mentioned. And I think somewhere between like 16 and 18, she actually caught me in the act of things. Whoo, I can laugh at this now. But I remember like she was questioning, like, oh my God, like what's going on? Like, I didn't raise you this way. And by this time, like, I'm understanding, I'm doing my own work. Like, at this point, I knew that I wanted to do something with like psychology or like therapy and things. I think at this point, like, Iyanla was out. Iyanla Fixed My Life, and I was a real big Tyler Perry fan of just pulling a lot of the messages from his stage plays and things like that, of just understanding the mental importance behind those things, and loved it. So I stayed in tune with a lot of those different things. But I do remember at this point, like, when my mom was asking about like sexuality, and it was like, I didn't raise you this way. What is going on? Like, where did this come from? Did anybody touch you? Did anything happen? And I'm like, no, this is just what I've always felt. And again, this is when I began to tell her at this point, it's like, this doesn't mean you failed, or I'm like, no, you didn't raise me. What do you mean you didn't raise me this way? Like, what way did you raise me? Like, and this is why I debate people who say like it's a choice, because it's like, again, if that's I don't even want to get into that conversation. That's another conversation for another day. That's a whole other rabbit trail. I do not want to do that today. So, I think that point also just added another layer to. I was so sad that day that she called me, because I'm like, oh, you're gonna tell the family and da. And she's like, no, honey, some things you just got to take to your grave. And I was like, what? But it was also weird for me at that point that even hearing that, it was like, I don't want to live my life taking anything like that to the grave. Like, to suppress and repress something of who you are and experience in a time to what? Like, why? Why would I do that? Why would you do that? But that was that. Then I think the next time, again, I said, I know it was like 18 when I contemplated again, and I forget what triggered it, but it was just another moment of like heavy sadness and was maybe like another wave of depression. And by this time, like when I was 13, I actually left my home church with my family home church, and started going to another church, Life in the Word, that I spent most of my teenage and becoming an adult years at. But I was still battling depression silently. And now this is where I would say I maybe use the word struggle lightly. As far as like struggling with sexuality, because it was the things where, again, being in that church, being involved in singing, and I was on the praise team, I was in the mime team, I was on the in the children's church, I was one of the children's teachers, and a bunch of other different, as the old church used to call them, auxiliaries, but ministries I was a part of just running myself and going and doing and doing and doing and doing, and begin to truly burn myself out. And I remember that it come to a time that I was like, I'm no longer gonna hide this. And I actually started, and there was, again, some girls that I had talked to during this time, and it was another, especially at this point, like 16, 17, driving, and those first experiences of getting out and hanging out with people, and those times that you consider certain things as your first kiss and things like that. I knew for me that I didn't ever want to live that life of trying to commit to a life of having a girlfriend or having a wife and having kids, and but still holding this secret part of me. And but I remember I did, because I was in the church, tried to pray it away. It was like, ooh, I don't want to deal with this. No. It's gotta go. God, take it away, take it away, take it away. So I was, even at a young age, like, the older people at the church was like, ooh, he's on fire for God. And it's like, if y'all only knew what I was at this altar for. But as I began to, I don't remember the timeline on this part, but I remember softly coming out to some at the church. And maybe I was a little older then. So let me back up. So 18, I remember, again, I don't remember exactly what triggered it, but I remember sending this recording to my cousin Courtney, and it was either me singing or talking, and it was just like, this is it. Like, I hope you guys remember me in a good light. And I drove around the city for a while. I drove and I drove and I drove and I drove and I drove. And I contemplated running the car off the road and just doing whatever. Again, I just wanted to end it. I just wanted to be done. I didn't want to feel, I didn't want to think, I didn't want to do any of that. And I remember one of my close cousins called me, and Courtney called me, his girlfriend at the time called me, which was my pastor and pastor's wife's daughter. Daughter. They just called and called and called, and I don't remember if anybody had contacted my parents or not, because I don't remember if they called me. And that was a very hard thing. And I think that even during this time, so what happened, as I'm driving, my phone is ringing and I'm not answering anybody. I just wanted to be alone, and I actually ended up going to Applebee's, and I sat, and being that I wasn't 21, I ordered a mocktail. But I remember my pastor's wife, Miss Scott, calling in, Bree called, and Casey called, and Courtney, and it was almost like I was watching the calls just to see who would call, to see who cared as well. But it was a painful moment. I don't remember who I ended up answering for, but I remember getting in touch with my pastor's wife, Miss Scott, and she called me to their house and she was like, "Get here now." And backstory on that being that I was at that church and I went to their house a lot on the weekends, and after rehearsals and things, we would all go there. And me, Casey, Danielle, Bree, Jay, Miss Scott, and Pastor Scott all be at the house. So they had become like my safety net, my family away from my family. Started going with my cousin Casey there, and he was the reason why I actually joined the church. And I literally felt like it was one of the best things that I could have ever done. It just became a safe space for me. And in addition to, as I said, with my mom kind of creating safe spaces, this experience with the Scotts really became like what I knew a safe space to be. It was one of the first few times I felt seen, and I felt noticed and heard and loved and respected. They were literally my hideaway from my family, my immediate and extended family. But back to that night, Miss Scott had called and she told me to come to her house, and I drove slowly. I knew I was in trouble. I drove slow. And she met me at the door and she was like, "I don't know what's going on. And I don't know what may have triggered this," but she was like, "Son, know that I love you. Know that you are loved." And she said that to take your life is one of the most selfish things you can do. Consider, with how you love me and how I love you, how that would make me feel if you were no longer here. Think about how it would make your family feel. And I interrupted her and I said, "Well, they don't care, so would it matter?" And even then, she embraced me and she hugged me and she was just like, "You're hurting. And that's why you're saying that." And she was right. I was in a very, very dark place due to depression. And again, even this, I still have never talked to my parents about this. I don't even know if they remember this day. But the way that lady hugged me and she just loved on me, it brought a different light to me. And then she had me sit and pray with the pastor, and we talked, and I think I wanted to stay at her house that night, but I ended up going back to my parents. But I think I stayed for a little bit and we just talked, and I went home and again, never spoke of this day again. And so many people don't understand why I'm celebrating 30 the way that I am. I did a nude photo shoot for my 30th, 31, I have just been embracing, and that's another reason why I'm on this hiatus, to just rest, because I feel like that's where it's leading me, and that's what I'm opening myself up to. But when you have been through experiences where you did not know if you were even going to make it to 30 because you wanted to take yourself out of here, you begin to celebrate life in a different way. And you begin to realize that every day is a gift, every day is precious. By no means is my life perfect. By no means do I have it together at all. I'm still learning, I'm still growing. But I simply try to cherish every single day, because I know that there is a point. I remember even at one point I was like, God, if I'm still gay at 29, I don't want to be here. Here I am at 31, just as gay as all can be. But even that, it's the peace that I got in that at 20, 21, 22. I remember praying and even like, God, please change this, please take it away, change this. And I remember the voice that we know that we've said is the voice of God to say, what do you want me to change? I made you how you are. You are perfect. I love you, and I need you to love you. That would be a segue into my song Love Me, but that is where that came from. But I literally try to embrace each day as a gift. I try to love me and love on me in any way that I can. Because those years before, I know I didn't love me. And I am so grateful to be here at 31. So, I don't know how deep this was for a lot of y'all who may be listening. I think one thing that I'm thinking is like, oh, what are people going to think? Are they going to think it's, well, you didn't experience suicide, blah, 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 blah. We go in our head about things, but I'm like, every experience is different. Everyone's experience is different. But still, to say it's important, it's vital, it's necessary to love on your people, love on yourself, reach out. I tell people this all the time. If you don't have a safe space where you feel like you can talk to people, find a safe space. Find your people. It may not be your immediate or direct family, but your people are there for you. And it is so important to find that. Families and friends, it's important to give your family and your friends those safe spaces, because you never know what people are dealing with. You never know what could push them, what could trigger something. But that's my story. Part of it, at least. I do want to keep doing these. I don't know. It's freeing for me to just sit and talk and discuss this, whether people listen or not. Just to be able to go back and literally feel like these are like little journal entries. So it's going to be good for me. Something I can document and have for myself, or, hopefully, again, it'll help somebody. I do believe that nothing we go through is for ourselves. It's always to help someone else if we allow it. But I think that's going to be all I have for today. So I will close this thing out. I opened it with the Pep Talks prayer, and I'll close it out with the same. If you have any questions or topics that you want me to talk about in other podcasts, feel free to let me know. But it's gonna be it for me today. I'm gonna, on my way home before coming to do this, I stopped by the store to get me some comfort food because I knew this was gonna be an emotional thing, and I wanted to be able to comfort myself afterwards. So. But as the church says, all hearts and minds clear. Just recapping with this prayer that this is not a space to feel judged. This is not a space to feel ashamed. This is not a space to feel alone. But this is a space to feel peace. This is a space to confess. This is a space to let go. And this is a space to receive. Spirit of light, we now thank you for illuminating the darkness. Spirit of peace, we thank you for settling the chaos within. Spirit of love, we thank you for comforting us. Spirit of joy, we thank you for making us whole. And while our pieces make us feel separated, we understand that it is our cracks that lets our light shine through. And it is our truth and our love that sets us free. And we are the light that shines through the darkness. We are the love that frees ourselves and others. And we are worthy of every goal, every dream, and everything that we aspire to be. And now we breathe in to receive the newness of life, and exhale to release the old. Be radical, be daring, be you. Much love and peace.